The fluorescent hum of Warren's office gave me a headache, but today I thought it was the sound of victory. I sat straight, smoothing a tie bought for this meeting. Warren didn't look up from his phone. When he finally spoke, he didn't offer a contract. He offered an insult. My boss pulled my promotion after 15 years of hard work saying, "You are not VP material. Be grateful for the experience we gave you." So, I took a competitor's VP offer. 2 days later, everything blew up. We decided to pause the expansion. Warren said, waving a hand as if dismissing a waiter. "Priorities shift, Alex. You understand." I understood perfectly. I understood he was lying. 3 weeks ago, he sent me a calendar invite titled VP Transition Planning. I still had it saved on my phone, burning a hole in my pocket. He wasn't pausing the roll. He was pausing me. He leaned back, smiling that practiced, empty executive smile. "We need fresh talent. Modern thinking." He glanced at his watch, bored. "Fresh talent," I repeated, my voice dangerously calm. This was a man who couldn't export a PDF without my help. I had spent 15 years being the guy everyone called when the world caught fire. Wildfires, blizzards, strikes. I fixed them all. And what am I, Warren? He sighed, standing up to signal the meeting was over. "You are reliable, Alex. You are the infrastructure. We don't promote the foundation to the penthouse. It makes the building fall down." He thought that was a compliment. I reached into my pocket and unlocked my phone. "You approved the budget line item last month." "I have the email." I held the screen up. For a second, his eyes widened like a kid caught stealing candy. Then the mask slid back into place. He shrugged, picking up a golf ball from his desk. "Things change. Budgets get reallocated. If you are unhappy, you can explore other options. But let's be honest, Alex. You need the stability." The ball clattered against the glass desktop. That sound was a gavel ending my career at Bridgewater Freight. I looked at Warren, really looked at him, and saw the truth for the first time. This wasn't about budgets or timing. It was about control. If they promoted me, they had to pay me. If they kept me hungry, they could squeeze every ounce of value out of me for pennies. He didn't want a VP. He wanted a servant. The anger in my chest cooled into something solid, heavy, and sharp. "Thank you for the update," I said. My tone was neutral, professional, and terrifyingly polite. Warren blinked, expecting an argument or a plea. He didn't know how to handle silence. "Good man," he muttered, turning his back to look out the window. "Close the door on your way out." I did. I walked straight to my desk, bypassed my email, and opened the folder I'd been ignoring for months. It was from Nathan at Apex Logistics. The subject line ready, "When you are ready." I sat in my car, staring at the gray dashboard of my sedan. My thumb hovered over Megan's contact. I wanted to call her, to scream about Warren's smug face and the 15 years I'd just wasted. But complaining wasn't a strategy. It was just noise. If I told her now, the panic in my voice would scare the kids. I needed a win, not a vent session. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat and started the engine. The motor sputtered once before catching, another reminder of things I'd neglected for this job. I drove past the highway on ramp and headed toward the city center instead. I pulled into a coffee shop parking lot and opened my laptop. The email from Nathan was 3 weeks old. "When you are ready," the subject line read. It felt prophetic. I typed a reply, my fingers heavy. "I am available now." The response came before I could close the lid. "Come to the HQ. I am still here." Apex Logistics was only 10 minutes away, a glass tower that looked down on Bridgewater's brick warehouse like a predator watching prey. My stomach turned. This was treason. I told myself it was survival. Warren had fired the first shot. I was just returning fire. The Apex lobby smelled like expensive citrus and success. The receptionist didn't ask who I was. She just handed me a badge with my name pre-printed. "Mr. Vance is expecting you on the top floor," she said, smiling. I took the elevator up, watching the city shrink. Bridgewater felt small from up here, a relic of the past. When the doors opened, Nathan was waiting. He wasn't wearing a suit. He wore a simple button-down and jeans, looking more like a tech founder than a logistics tycoon. He extended a hand. "Alex, I was starting to worry you'd never wake up." We sat in a conference room with walls made of clear glass. No fake plants. No motivational posters about teamwork. Nathan slid a thick binder across the table. I opened it. Inside were printouts of my presentations from the Denver summit, my white papers on winter roading, and even a forum post I'd written anonymously about supply chain redundancy. "We use these," Nathan said, leaning back. "Your winter protocol cut our delay penalties by 60% last year. We literally teach it to new hires during orientation." I stared at the pages. My work was their handbook. Bridgewater took credit for all of this, I said, pointing at a routing diagram I had drawn on a napkin years ago. Nathan nodded. "We knew it was you. The style is distinctive. Efficient. Warren doesn't know a pallet from a pallet." He tapped the table. "I've been trying to hire you for 5 years, Alex. I stopped sending headhunters because I realized you were too loyal to leave until they pushed you." He was right. It wasn't just a job offer. It was validation. I wasn't just the guy who fixed problems. I was the expert. He didn't ask about my weaknesses. He didn't ask where I saw myself in 5 years. He pushed a single sheet of paper toward me. It was a contract. Vice President of Regional Operations. The title read. I scanned down to the numbers. The base salary wasn't just a bump. It was 40% higher than what I was begging Warren for. Plus equity. Plus a signing bonus that could pay off my car. "This is real?" I asked. Nathan handed me a pen. "It's been real for years. You were just working in the wrong building." I signed my name. The ink looked dark and permanent against the white page. My hand didn't shake. The guilt I expected to feel was absent, replaced by a cold, quiet clarity. I had spent a decade and a half building a castle for a man who wouldn't let me inside the gate. Now, I had the keys to the kingdom next door. Nathan shook my hand, his grip firm. "Start Monday?" he asked. "Monday is perfect," I replied. I walked out to the elevator, checking my watch. It was only 6 p.m. Loyalty was a currency, and Bridgewater just went bankrupt. Sunday dinner tasted like cardboard, but the cheap wine tasted like freedom. I watched Megan clear the plates, while the kids argued over a tablet in the living room. They didn't know yet. I hadn't told anyone but my wife that tomorrow, the mortgage was being paid by the enemy. I retreated to my home office, the one room Warren never invaded, and booted up my Bridgewater laptop for the last time. The screen glowed blue in the dark room. It felt like arming a bomb. I wasn't just quitting. I was documenting the crime scene. I opened a blank document and titled it Operational Transition Protocols. Most people write 2 sentences and leave. I wrote 40 pages. I detailed every client quirk, every routing vulnerability, and every carrier negotiation currently in flux. It looked like a manual for success, but I knew the truth. It was a labyrinth. Without my specific context, the data was just noise. I listed the passwords to the legacy systems Warren didn't even know existed. I gave him exactly what he asked for: the infrastructure. Good luck driving it. At the bottom of the document, I added the kicker. Given the complexity of pending contracts, I am available for transition consulting. I paused, my fingers hovering over the keys. I typed, $450 per hour, minimum 4-hour block. It was an insulting rate, triple my old salary breakdown. It wasn't about the money. It was a test. I knew Warren would laugh at it, crumple it up, and throw it away. That was the point. When the board asked why he didn't retain my help, he would have to admit he refused the lifeline. Next came the resignation letter itself. No emotions. No, saddened to leave. Just the dates and the facts. Effective immediately. I attached the dense transition memo, a PDF that would take hours to parse. I added a list of pending emergencies for the week. A storm brewing off the coast, a potential strike in Chicago. Things I usually handled before breakfast. Now, they were Warren's problem. I checked the recipient's Warren, HR, and a BCC to my personal email. Evidence was everything. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. 11:47 p.m. I hit send. The whoosh sound of the outgoing mail was softer than I expected for something that would destroy a department. I sat back, the leather chair creaking. My heart should have been racing, but my pulse was slow, steady. I waited. I watched the inbox, expecting an auto, reply, or maybe silence until morning. I took a sip of water, the condensation cold against my palm. I wondered if Warren was awake. I wondered if he was checking his phone in bed, blissfully unaware that his safety net just vanished. 5 minutes passed. The room was silent except for the hum of the hard drive. Then, at 11:52 p.m., the screen flickered. A gray box popped up, connection lost. I tried to refresh the browser. Account disabled. Contact administrator. They didn't wait until morning. They didn't wait for a conversation. Someone in IT had been on standby, or Warren had an alert set up for my name. They cut the cord instantly. It was the fastest decision Bridgewater had made in 15 years. They thought they were protecting the company from a disgruntled employee. I laughed, a dry sound in the quiet house. By locking me out, they had locked themselves in. The transition memo was sent, but the shared drive links inside it. They required my credentials to access the folders. By deactivating my account in a panic, they had just corrupted the only map I left them. I closed the laptop and pushed it away. It was a paperweight now. They didn't view me as a person leaving. They viewed me as a liability to be neutralized. They forgot that liabilities can explode if you handle them wrong. Monday morning at Apex felt like walking onto a different planet. The air conditioning actually worked, and the coffee in the break room wasn't instant sludge. Nathan met me at 8:30 sharp with a tablet and a genuine smile. No crisis. No screaming clients. Just a login screen that worked instantly. "Welcome aboard, Alex," he said, handing me a stark white keycard. It felt heavy, substantial. I sat at my new desk, a slab of glass overlooking the city. The silence was the most expensive thing in the room. I had barely adjusted my ergonomic chair when my personal phone started vibrating against the desk. It wasn't a ring, it was a seizure. I flipped it over. Notification after notification cascaded down the screen. They weren't from Warren. They were from my team, my former team. The first text was from Sarah, my best senior coordinator. "Did you really do it? You are gone." Then a second text, 3 minutes later. "If you are out, I am out. I can't do this without cover." The dominoes were falling. By 9:15 a.m., the vibration turned into a steady, angry hum. Sarah had submitted her formal resignation. Then Miller followed suit. Then Hernandez. 3 senior coordinators, the absolute spine of the department, walking out within 45 minutes of finding my empty office. I hadn't poached them. I hadn't even told them I was leaving. They just looked at the empty chair where their protection used to sit and realized they were exposed. Loyalty to me was the only thing keeping them there, and Warren never saw it. The inevitable call came at 10:23 a.m. Warren's name flashed on the screen like a warning label. I let it ring twice, sipping my fresh espresso before sliding the green icon. Alex. His voice was tight, a violin string about to snap. He didn't say hello. You think this is funny? Poaching my entire floor before you've even cleared the building. I leaned back, looking at the city skyline. I didn't poach anyone, Warren. I just left. They made their own choices. Don't play innocent with me, he snapped. I could hear papers shuffling frantically in the background. Sarah and Miller just walked. HR is drafting legal threats as we speak. Non-competes, Alex. We'll sue you into the ground. I almost laughed. They don't have non-competes, Warren. They're hourly coordinators. You refused to give them contracts because you wanted flexibility to fire them during slow seasons. The line went silent. He remembered. His own cheapness had just left the barn door wide open. The silence stretched, filled only by the sound of someone nearby asking Warren where the winter files were. Look. His tone shifted, dropping an octave into desperation. We can handle the turnover. But we can't access the routing mainframe. The password isn't in your memo. I swiveled my chair. It was in the shared drive link I sent, Warren. The one you locked me out of at midnight. You burned the map. I heard him curse, a sharp, ugly sound. He realized the trap he'd set. Give it to me. Now. He demanded. I can't, I said smoothly. I don't work there. Sharing security credentials with a non-employee is a violation of your IT policy. You wrote that policy. Remember, I could practically hear his blood pressure spiking. Alex, we have a storm hitting the Sierras in 4 hours. Trucks are already rolling. I looked at the weather map on my Apex monitor. It was going to be a bad one. Then you better start driving. Warren. I hung up. It took exactly 4 days for the rumors to reach me. The freight industry is smaller than a high school cafeteria, and bad news travels faster than light. I was sitting in a strategy meeting at Apex when my phone buzzed with a screenshot from a former colleague. It was an internal org chart announcement. Warren hadn't promoted one of the surviving senior coordinators. He hadn't hired an external expert. He had appointed Maya, the strategic analyst, who used to fetch his coffee, as the interim director of operations. Maya's first executive decision was to declare my transition memo overly cautious. She held a meeting I heard about later, calling my routing protocols legacy bloat that slowed down innovation. She wanted to prove Warren's faith in her wasn't just personal. So, when the Highway 90 closure alerts came in, the ones I flagged in bold red text, she didn't activate the alternate routes. She saw a straight line on a map and decided she knew better than the road crews. The result was catastrophic and immediate. 12 refrigerated trucks carrying perishable pharmaceuticals hit the construction blockade at 2 p.m. They couldn't turn around on the narrow access road. They just sat there, burning fuel, while the cooling units fought a losing battle against the afternoon sun. I watched the GPS markers on the industry tracking board, little red dots piling up like a car crash. Nathan stood beside me, watching the carnage. Who is running their dispatch? He asked. Nobody, I replied. The client didn't call the dispatch line. They called the CEO. I knew because the client was Hartley Pharmaceuticals, and their logistics director, Jim texted me in a panic. He didn't know I had left yet. Alex, why are my trucks parked in a gravel pit? He wrote. I had to type the hardest reply of my life. I don't work at Bridgewater anymore, Jim. You need to call Warren. I watched the three dots of his typing bubble appear, disappear, and then reappear. The private failure became public humiliation by happy hour. A driver stuck in the queue posted a video to the Freight Lords forum. It showed the Bridgewater logo on the side of a stalled truck with the caption, Dispatch said the road was open. Dispatch is high. It got 300 shares in an hour. At Apex, we didn't laugh. Professional incompetence isn't funny, it's terrifying. But for Warren, it wasn't just a mistake. It was a billboard announcing the pilot had jumped out of the plane. Instead of recalling the trucks or apologizing, Warren sent a company-wide email blaming unforeseen weather patterns and vendor unreliability. He shielded Maya completely. He praised her. Poise under pressure. In the same email that announced $100,000 in penalties. It was gaslighting on an industrial scale. My phone started buzzing again, this time from the junior analysts still trapped inside. They saw the writing on the wall. Warren wasn't trying to save the ship. He was trying to save his first mate. The final blow came just before I left for the day. Nathan called me into his office, a strange look on his face. He held up his phone. Jim from Hartley just called me, Nathan said. He wants to know if we have capacity to take over their account starting Monday. I felt a cold shock. That was a $28 million contract. What did you tell him? I asked. Nathan grinned, shark-like. I
told him.
We just hired the guy who built their schedule. Signing the Hartley contract felt like attending a funeral for my old life. Jim sat across from me in Apex's conference room, his pen hovering over the signature line. He looked exhausted, the kind of tired that comes from screaming at voicemails for a week straight. I didn't want to do this, Alex, he said, his voice rough. But Maya called my shipping manager Sweetie when he asked about the missing pallets. I slid the coffee creamer toward him, offering a silent apology for the chaos I'd escaped. He signed. The loss of the $28 million Hartley account wasn't a leak, it was a hull breach. Within hours, the industry blogs were running headlines about Bridgewater's catastrophic liquidity event. My phone buzzed with texts from the few friends I still had inside the building. They described Warren sprinting down the hallway, screaming into his cell phone, his face a shade of purple usually reserved for bruised fruit. He wasn't managing the crisis. He was looking for a scapegoat, but the herd had already thinned out. By Wednesday, the resignation count hit 9. It wasn't just the senior coordinators anymore. The billing specialists, the dispatchers, and even the reception staff were walking out the door. They saw the captains fleeing and decided not to go down with the ship. My inbox at Apex was flooded with resumes from people I used to share lunch with. I forwarded the good ones to HR and deleted the rest. Warren was replacing them with temp agencies, filling complex logistics roles with people who had never seen a bill of lading. The second domino fell on Friday morning. A major automotive parts supplier, a client I had nurtured for 7 years, sent a termination notice effective immediately. They didn't even ask for a meeting. They just cited material breach of contract. We switched to a carrier in Ohio. That was another $30 million gone in a blink. The silence from Bridgewater's executive suite was deafening. There were no more company-wide emails about resilience or teamwork. There was only the sound of shredders running overtime in the finance department. Maya's incompetence had shifted from annoying to legally actionable. We heard she had tried to cover the capacity gaps by subcontracting to unvetted carriers, a direct violation of safety compliance protocols. One of those cheap trucks lost a load of electronics on the interstate, scattering expensive circuit boards across 3 lanes of traffic. The police report made the evening news. When the reporter asked for a comment, Bridgewater issued a statement blaming driver error, but everyone knew the driver never should have been hired in the first place. I watched Bridgewater's stock ticker from my second monitor, a grim reality show I couldn't turn off. It dipped 4 points, then 6, a slow bleed turning into a hemorrhage. Competitors weren't just circling, they were taking bites out of the carcass. Sales reps from every logistics firm in the tri-state area were calling Bridgewater's client list, using the news reports as their opening pitch. Warren had spent 15 years building a fortress of fear, but he forgot that fear doesn't work when the soldiers are starving. Warren tried one last desperate pivot to stop the bleeding. He called an emergency town hall, but he didn't invite the operations floor. He only invited the executives and the board members, trying to spin a narrative of market volatility. My source in IT, who was currently wiping his hard drive, listened in via the conference line. He texted me a play-by-play. Warren was blaming the departures on a coordinated sabotage campaign. He was weaving a conspiracy theory to hide the simple fact that he was bad at his job. The atmosphere inside Bridgewater had shifted from panic to a ghostly quiet. The operations floor, usually a hive of ringing phones and shouting dispatchers, was largely empty. The temps sat in silence, afraid to touch the keyboards, while the remaining managers hid in their offices. The vending machines were empty because the vendor hadn't been paid. It was a zombie company, shuffling forward on momentum alone. I felt a pang of sadness for the building itself. It was just brick and mortar, but it had held my life. Then came the black SUVs. I didn't see them myself, but the photos hit the group chat instantly. A team of 4 people in dark suits walked into the lobby, bypassing the reception desk entirely. They weren't clients. They weren't vendors. They carried briefcases that looked like weapons. It was the audit committee. The board of directors had finally woken up from their slumber and realized their investment was burning. They didn't go to Warren's office. They went straight to the server room and secured the physical backups. That evening, I stood by the window in my new office, watching the city lights flicker on. The audit team seizing the servers meant one thing. This wasn't an operational fix anymore. It was a crime scene investigation. They weren't looking for efficiencies. They were looking for fraud, negligence, and liability. Warren wasn't fighting for his job anymore. He was fighting for his freedom. I took a sip of water, the cool liquid settling my stomach. The collapse wasn't just inevitable. It was total. The extinction event had begun. The sun cut across my desk at a sharp angle, blinding me just enough to make the caller ID blurry. I didn't need to see the name to know who it was. It was Thursday, 2:47 p.m., exactly 3 weeks since I walked out. I let it ring. 1, 2, 3. I wasn't playing hard to get. I was letting the silence do the heavy lifting. Finally, I picked up. "This is Alex. I didn't ask how he was. I knew. Alex, we need to talk." Warren's voice sounded like it had been dragged over gravel. It lacked the slick, corporate veneer he usually wore like armor. "I can come to you," he continued, rushing the words. "Coffee, dinner, anywhere?" The image of Warren, who never left his corner office for anyone earning less than six figures, driving across town to beg was almost pitiful. I am busy, Warren, I said, leaning back in my chair. Just say what you need to say, he exhaled, a ragged sound of defeat. We want you back. The board authorized me to offer the VP of Operations title immediately. Paperwork is ready. I stared at the dust motes dancing in the light. And the compensation, I asked, just to hear him say it. We'll match Apex, he said quickly. Plus 20%. Equity options. Full benefits reinstatement. It was a fortune. It was the life I had begged for. Now, it just sounded like hush money for a crime. It gets better. Warren pressed, sensing my silence wasn't a yes. You won't report to me. You'll report directly to the board. Full autonomy over the region. You build the team. The words hung in the air, heavy with unintended confession. He was offering me the very thing he claimed I wasn't ready for just 20 days ago. He wasn't offering a promotion. He was admitting that he had been the only ceiling above my head for 15 years. It wasn't incompetence, it was sabotage. I sent you a transition memo, Warren, I said, keeping my voice flat. I offered consulting services at a premium rate. You locked me out of the system instead. There was a pause, thick with regret. We made mistakes in the heat of the moment, he stammered. We didn't think we needed a consultant. We thought the team could handle it. He meant he thought he could handle it. He thought my job was easy. The silence on the line proved how wrong he was. The position is yours, Alex. It's the role you should have had years ago. The sentence slipped out before he could catch it. I gripped the phone tighter. If I should have had it years ago, why didn't I asked. The question was a trap, and he walked right into it. The timing wasn't right then. He lied, falling back on old scripts. But it's right now. He didn't understand. The timing wasn't right because I was valuable. Now, the timing was right because he was desperate. Just give us 30 days, he pleaded. Come back, stabilize the ship, train the new coordinators. We'll pay you a consulting fee on top of the salary. 30 days. That was his play. Get me back in the building, bury me in the crisis, and let guilt do the rest. Once I fixed his mess, he would find a way to clip my wings again. I can't do that, Warren, I said. I have a new team. A team that doesn't need to be rescued. We're restructuring the interim leadership. He added quickly, his voice rising in pitch. The current director, she's being reassigned. You wouldn't have to deal with her. He couldn't even say Maya's name. He was trying to erase the evidence of his nepotism while asking me to clean up the spill. That sounds like an internal HR matter. I replied coldly. I am not interested in cleaning up your personal messes. Warren. The line went dead silent. He knew that I knew. The leverage had shifted permanently. The board is asking questions. Alex, he whispered, the fight draining out of him. Auditors are looking at the transition. They want to know why the knowledge transfer failed. He was terrified. He wasn't just losing his department. He was losing his cover story. If you come back, we can say it was a negotiation tactic. We can say it was planned. He wanted me to be his alibi. He wanted me to lie to the auditors to save his pension. The audacity was breathtaking. I am not your shield, Warren, I said, my voice final. Tell the auditors the truth. Tell them you had 15 years to secure your infrastructure, and you chose to treat it like furniture. I didn't wait for his response. I didn't need to hear him beg anymore. Good luck with the investigation, I added, dropping the last bomb. I hung up. The sun was still shining on my desk, but now it felt warmer. I went back to work, leaving him to the wolves. 4 weeks after the collapse began, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. It wasn't Warren. It was an external investigator named Karen, hired by the board to sift through the ashes. She asked if I was willing to conduct a retroactive exit interview. I sat in my corner office at Apex, watching the rain hit the glass, and agreed. I didn't offer opinions or spite. I simply walked her through the timeline of promises made and broken. The truth is a weapon that needs no sharpening. When she asked about the interim leadership appointments, I kept my voice steady. I didn't mention rumors or office gossip. I told her to review the promotion velocity of the strategic analyst relative to her operational experience. You might also want to reference the travel expense reports for the executive team against the analyst's schedule. I added quietly. The sound of rapid typing filled the line.
I wasn't.
Planting evidence, I was just turning on the lights in a room Warren had kept dark for years. 2 weeks later, the press release hit the industry wires. It was brief, citing violations of fiduciary responsibility. But the subtext was screaming. Warren was terminated for cause, effective immediately. The audit trail had exposed the nepotism, the manipulated performance reviews, and the illicit relationship that dictated operational strategy. He tried to threaten a lawsuit to save face, but the board's lawyers presented the email logs I had hinted at. He dropped the case by noon. The man who demanded gratitude was left with absolutely nothing. The destruction didn't stop at the office door. In a town this size, secrets don't stay buried once the money runs out. I heard from a mutual friend that Warren's wife filed for divorce shortly after the termination news broke. She had apparently been suspicious for months, and the public audit provided the confirmation she needed. Maya was quietly let go the same afternoon. Her position dissolved as if it never existed. They had built their entire future on my silence, betting that I was too weak to walk away. I sat at my desk at Apex, reviewing the quarterly projections. We were up 30%, driven largely by the clients who had fled the chaos across town. I thought about Warren's parting shot, the insult that had started this entire avalanche. He was right. I wasn't VP material for Bridgewater. I wasn't willing to sacrifice competence for ego or cover up failure with buzzwords. I didn't fit their mold because their mold was broken. I wasn't the infrastructure holding up their lies anymore. I was the architect of my own life. Nathan knocked on my doorframe, interrupting my thoughts. Great work on the Hartley transition, Alex. The client is raving about the new routing efficiency. He didn't offer a generic pat on the head. He offered specific, tangible respect. I packed my bag at exactly 5 p.m. I wasn't staying late to fix a disaster. I was going home to Megan and the kids. I walked out into the cool evening air, taking a deep breath. The city lights twinkled above me, looking less like emergency flares and more like opportunities.